Hello everyone! Today I'm going to try something different. Today I'm going to do the predictions for the upcoming World Cup in Qatar. I will go through the groups, the knockout stages of the tournament, who I think will be top scorer, which team will score the most, and a team that will surprise in a good and in a bad way. My apologies in advance if I butcher some of the names, and of course, feel free to laugh at me for being totally wrong in that side. Thanks for joining me, guys. Let's start off with Group A. This prediction might surprise some actually, especially since I'm from the Netherlands myself. Can you hear it? But allow me to explain. If you do a deep dive into the squads of Senegal and the Netherlands, the Senegal squad might actually be better. They have Mendy, the goalkeeper of Chelsea on goal, Koulibaly, leading a defense that's mostly active in the team. They have decent midfielders in Idrissa Gana Gueye, Nampalys Mendy, Chico Kouyaté, and Papa Gueye as well. They have a talented attack with players active in the League 1 again. They also have Sadio Mane, but it's not entirely clear when he'll be completely fit. He's been called up, but again, we'll have to see whether he'll be able to make the first match against the Netherlands or not. This team has its weak spots, but is overall considered the golden generation of Senegal, and rightfully so. They've qualified for the World Cup with ease and won the Africa Cup. Furthermore, I think they will be better suited to the climate, and because the Netherlands rightfully criticizing the hosts on the matters of human rights, odds are that the local Qatari will be cheering for Senegal instead. There is of course the question on how much weather and circumstances will matter this tournament. The stadiums have a retractable roof and air conditioning installed, and I think 7 out of the 8 stadiums, not entirely sure. How efficient it will be in keeping the heat out of a stadium packed with visitors, I don't know. Even if the stadiums are kept perfectly cool, it can still affect players' recovery and training output. I do have to say, with Mane out, Senegal might struggle to score enough goals, but again, that's something we just have to see. Then we have the Dutch squad. It's led by experienced and well-respected manager Louis van Gaal, reporting for his 3rd World Cup tournament. The qualifying run started off poor, and there were actual genuine fears that the Dutch squad would not qualify. Louis van Gaal started off with a draw against Norway, but the squad hasn't lost under Van Gaal yet, which had only resulted in them qualifying first in the World Cup qualifying rounds, but also winning their group in the UEFA Nations League. Yet, I feel the results do not really indicate the ability of the squad, and there are some clear issues for the Dutch if you take a closer look. First of all, I think the Nations League results should not be taken into account too much. There were victories and 1 draw against teams like Belgium, that's clearly past its best. Same old is true for Wales, and Poland hasn't performed well in tournaments lately. Due to the extreme schedule, I also do not believe too many players and squads were motivated to go all out for glorified friendlies, which is basically Nations League matches. The biggest issue in my book is that the Dutch players are either substitutes at their clubs at the moment or not in good form. Van Dijk does not seem to be as good as before he got his injury, and his form is sort of reflected in Liverpool's current form. Frenkie de Jong and Depay are substitutes at Barcelona, although it seems like Frenkie de Jong is getting more minutes tonight. Yet Depay is out with an injury, and it's not entirely clear whether he'll be fully fit at the moment the World Cup starts. Pasveer is a 38-year-old that's currently first choice as goalkeeper. The Dutch have a strong alternative in Vlekken, who's doing very well at SC Freiburg this year, but knowing Van Gaal, he will not change goalkeeper all of a sudden without testing in friendlies first, and the Dutch do not play any friendly matches before the start of the World Cup. Another clear weak spot seems to be Daley Blind. He used to be a world class actually, but at the age of 32 and 2 heart failure issues similar to Eriksen, it's a miracle he's still active. His pace and acceleration have clearly gone down, and he's having a poor time all around with Ajax in both Europe and in the Eredivisie as well actually. And the same holds true for other regular Dutch starters like Rens, Timber Klaassen, Berghuis, and Bergwijn and Robbery. In fact, a lot of the Dutch squad members seem to be active in the Dutch Eredivisie, which I consider a weakness if you compare it, for example, with Senegal, that can tap into players that are active in Ligue 1, La Liga, and the Premier League in most cases. Everything summarized, I think Senegal can edge out the Netherlands in the first match, which will leave the Netherlands to scramble to still qualify for the knockout rounds in the other two matches, which I think they will do, if only just. Next up is Qatar. A bigger known for many, I assume, but don't write them off completely just yet. Most of the Qatari squad play in Qatar itself, but let's take a look at their recent results. They've managed to win the AFC Asian Cup, which is impressive, and have done so by beating teams like South Korea and Japan that are both present in the World Cup as well. They've drawn a lot of countries in friendlies and generally do not concede a lot of goals since the loss against Serbia in 2021. At home advantage and the fact that they are very familiar with the climate, of course, and that results in Qatar being able to make life difficult for all teams in this group instead of the walkover people might suspect. Last up will be Ecuador. I've checked their squad, but there is not one name I would recognize. They managed to get some impressive results, which include draws against Brazil and Argentina, but their best results are on home turf, which is famous for its high altitude, which are very difficult circumstances to players that are not used to playing on high altitude. They barely concede goals in their last matches, but due to the climate being perhaps the opposite of what they're used to, and the fact that they have similar issues scoring, I think Ecuador will come last in the group, conceding small defeats and perhaps getting a draw somewhere. We move on to Group B. Most eyes here will be on England, of course. Under Gareth Southgate, England have performed well in the last two tournaments, making the semi-finals in the World Cup in 2018 and losing the Euro Cup final to Italy in 2021. Yet, as most people are probably aware, things are not going that well for them lately. They came last in the Nations League by getting 3 draws and 3 losses to Germany, Italy and Hungary. Despite Gareth Southgate being more successful than any other coach in modern history, the people at home are murmuring and a lot of people want him gone. The sentiment is that Southgate had easy roads forward during both tournaments, plays very boring, and that the Nation League results are a humiliation. England fans seem to think that the current squad is possibly the best since 1966 and that Southgate should have won at least one of those tournaments. While I think the squad definitely has quality, I do not agree with that sentiment. For example, let's take a look at the squad England had in 2004, with huge names like Gary Neville, Steven Gerrard, David Beckham, John Terry, Paul Scholes, Wayne Rooney, Michael Owen, Frank Lampard and James Carragher. There's a lot of talent there, but I don't think a lot of current players are consistent performers. Kane is definitely one of their best players. Players like Saka, Foden, Sterling, Mount, Rashford and Sancho are a lot less consistent. I expect Pickford will once again be first choice goalkeeper. While he has his moments, I do consider him a weak spot as he can be quite eccentric and prone to panic. There are other players that aren't in great form either, including Henderson, Trent Alexander-Arnold and of course Maguire, players Southgate could consistently count on in previous tournaments. Yet I do think that the public is overreacting. I do not value the Nations League results as much as I do not think squads like France and England take the Nations League very serious. They are still glorified friendly games that have been given artificial value, especially during this season in which the schedule is extremely tightly packed with fixtures already. I would fully understand if these matches are not taken seriously. For example, Kevin De Bruyne was one of the more honest players that admitted that these matches are actually counterproductive. Both Deschamps and Southgate heavily rotated their squads as well, which also explains some of the bad results in the Nations League. There are more parallels between Deschamps and Southgate. They both play conservative, boring football, but in my book, that's a good thing. Boring wins you tournaments, as France has shown us in 2018. It's nearly impossible to play modern, fine-tuned systems with the amount of training time you get with the national squad, with players that are used to completely different systems and perhaps aren't suited to the system you want to play. Coaches of national teams should, to a degree, select players that are in good form, which means squads can completely look different each year. But it's probably the reason why coaches like Southgate like to stick to some of the players that they know, instead of always being fully reactionary, and pick players that are curiously good. I'd say a healthy mix needs to be found. In general, teams that are solid in defense win tournaments, as they can weather bad matches, the physical slog of playing many matches in a short span of time, and can feel the pace of the game if that is what's required. So while I think the England squad is weaker than 1 and 4 years ago, I do think they simply have too much quality to not put first in this group. Next up is a tight race for second place. I think all 3 remaining teams have a chance to come second, but I will go with the United States to come out on top. Without realizing it myself, apparently they have a lot of good players across Europe's top competitions, but the best ones I think they have are Pulisic and Reina. However, they have been inconsistent and have to deal with some injuries during the tournaments, but they did manage to win the Gold Cup in 2021 and managed to beat teams like Qatar and Mexico. They've been doing a lot more poorly in the latest round of friendly games, but again, I'm not sure how much value these friendly games have, again with this schedule. A lot of people and a lot of players probably aren't 100% motivated. Perhaps surprisingly, I think Iran will be able to snag third place. A lot of Europeans would probably look at the squad and would perhaps recognize 1 or 2 players. Taremi, who's playing for FC Porto, and Moharami, who's playing for Dinamo Zagreb. Yet the results have been impressive. For starters, let's take a look at their latest friendly game results. They've managed to get a draw against a very good Senegal and a win against Uruguay. But again, those are just friendly games, of course. Let's take a look at how Iran qualified for the World Cup. They managed to come in first in both of their groups, topping a team like South Korea, which is a more established side. They are also very familiar with the climate, of course, in Qatar, and due to their proximity in Qatar, it might actually give them a semi-home advantage. In contrast, Wales might have a hard time for the opposite reasons. In the past years, Wales had a competent squad that worked hard and had a few star players you could count on, with Bale being the biggest star. With Bale having settled down in semi-retirement home Los Angeles these days, with only scoring 3 goals so far in the MLS, those days seem to be officially over. They managed to beat Ukraine in the playoffs to qualify at the last moment, but only managed to win 1 out of their 8 last games, which was against Ukraine. Most of their players seem to be operating in the English Championship or are having a very poor time at Nottingham Forest at the moment, and because of that, I predict Wales will come last in Group B. Then we move on to Group C. Let's not beat around the bush here. Argentina will win this group. They've been unbeaten for 35 games and won the Copa America. The squad seems to be a cohesive group with Messi at the center. Scaloni has managed to bring back spirit and belief to a very deflated squad when he stepped in. There's a lot of quality in the squad, obviously, but maybe more importantly, the squad is willing to go the extra mile. They managed to beat Brazil in the Copa America final in Brazil by making the match an actual battle, offsetting the surplus in individual quality Brazil has. Argentina's main worry will be the injuries of Di Maria and Lo Celso, and it's not clear whether both of them will be fit in time. They should also be worried about the drop in form of Paredes, who has failed to impress at Juventus and PSG in the past 2 years. Despite that, I do predict this squad will make a deep run. Then there's an interesting battle for second place. It's been an unwritten tradition that Mexico manages to advance to the knockout phase and gets eliminated in the round of 16. Because of that unwritten tradition, a lot of people predict the same will happen this year. But let's take a look at the Mexico results in squad. In the World Cup qualifiers, they ended up second behind Canada, but ahead of the United States. They lost the final of the Gold Cup to the United States. In friendly games, it's a mixed bag. They lost to, they drew to Jamaica, Ecuador, and Guatemala, and lost to Uruguay, Paraguay, and Guatemala. Colombia. They won against Peru, Suriname, and Nigeria. And overall, considering fixtures, I would say those results do not look great. Neither are Poland's, to be fair. 2 victories against Wales and a draw and 2 losses against the Netherlands and Belgium in the nations. They qualified behind England and just ahead of Albania and Hungary with 6 wins, 2 draws and 2 losses. In the Euro Cup of 2021, Poland came dead last in their group with only 1 point behind Slovakia, Spain and Sweden. Yet I think Poland, out of these 2 squads, has the better squad on paper. There is of course Robert Lewandowski, who missed out on the Ballon d'Or in 2020, but there's a lot of Polish players playing in respectable leagues as well, mainly Serie A. The Mexican squad on average is not so lucky lately and is playing in more obscure leagues overall. Because of that, I think tradition will be broken this World Cup with Poland coming second and Mexico coming third. That leaves Saudi Arabia in 4th place. Yes, they're playing close to home and they're used to the climate. They came first in their qualifying group above Japan and Australia, so I don't expect them to be complete pushovers. However, if you take a look at their squad, it seems all of their players play in Saudi Arabia or the surrounding region itself. It's not necessarily an indication that there's no talent. However, the leagues they play in are generally weaker, which leaves them at a disadvantage to players that operate in more competitive leagues. I do think they could make life difficult for at least Poland and Mexico, and perhaps even get a result, but I do expect them to come last. Then Group D. On the surface, this might seem like a no-brainer. But I think things might be tighter than expected. France are of course the reigning world champions and have perhaps the scariest forward line with most recent Ballon d'Or winner Karim Benzema, Kylian Mbappé, Christopher Nkunku, Ousmane Dembele, Antoine Griezmann and Olivier Giroud. Yes, despite their club form, they've often performed well for the play and should not be underestimated. Yet there are issues on other lines. For example, their first goalkeeper Mike Mann is injured and will be missing because of the World Cup. Paul Pogba and N'Golo Kante are out because of injuries as well. At the moment, Varane is a maybe. France has a lot of new talent in midfield and defense, but the question will be whether they'll be able to perform on the biggest stage. Pavard is still there, but he did lose his first squad position at Bayern München at the moment. France will have to rely on the likes of Ferland Mendy, Saliba, Upamecano, Badiashile in the back, and the likes of Camavinga, Tchouameni and Fofana in midfield. While they have not played too many games together in the national squad, most of these players are currently doing very well at their clubs. The French squad has qualified for the World Cup quite comfortably, but have been bad in the Nations League. Like I said when we covered Group B, like England, I don't think the French squad took the Nations League seriously, and we will see a different France during the World Cup. On the other hand, we have Denmark. They of course were the biggest positive surprise in the last Euro Cup, making it to the semi-finals, losing to England only in extra time. Since then, Denmark has proven this is not a problem. Denmark has qualified even more comfortably than France did, winning their first 9 games in the qualifiers. If you take a look at their squad, we see a lot of quality. They have defenders that play in the best leagues, and the defensive line is led by Pierre. It's good to see Eriksen is still playing at the highest level. We all feared the worst when he went down with heart issues during the Euro Cup, but so far he is performing well at Manchester United after a rocky start of the season. There's of course Damsgaard, who scored a lot of goals for Denmark during the Euro Cup, but the player I would like to highlight would be Højbjerg. Højbjerg is perhaps Tottenham's best performing player this season with 3 goals and 2 assists alone. Contrary to France, their attack might be their weakest line with the types of Braithwaite, Dolberg, Wayland, and Olsen. I could see Denmark and France perhaps agreeing to a draw like they did in the last World Cup, with the goal difference deciding who comes first in the group. And I think France will be able to score more goals with their top-tier attack and within the group, with Denmark coming in close second. Then we have Australia and Tunisia battling for third place. Both squads are of course leagues off on paper if it comes down to quality. When comparing the squads, I find that Australia has more players playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe, but not by much, and they generally don't play much. Australia made it to the semi-finals, losing 4-0 to Qatar in the 2019 Asia Cup. They came in third in the third round of qualifiers for the World Cup and had to beat the United Arab Emirates and Peru in playoffs to make sure they reached the World Cup. In the Africa Cup of 2021, Tunisia came third in the group but advanced to the knockout phase anyway. They managed to beat Nigeria but lost to Burkina Faso in the quarterfinals. In the qualifiers, Tunisia came first in the group and beat Mali over 2 matches to qualify for the World Cup. To me, it's a bit of a toss-up, but I think I'll go with Australia nabbing third place due to their slight edge in quality in the squad. In Group E, people might suspect that we have a similar situation as the previous group, two strong teams that will compete for the top spot, and 2 at the bottom. Yet things might be slightly more complicated than some people suspect. Let's start from the bottom this time. Costa Rica qualified for the World Cup after being forced to play a playoff match against New Zealand after coming 4th in the third round of the North American qualifiers. They finished behind the United States, Mexico and Canada. In the Gold Cup, they came first in the group, then lost in the quarterfinals to Canada. I checked where the Costa Rica squad is contracted, and nearly all of them are playing for clubs in North America. Again, nothing wrong with that of course, but I do see that the other squads consist of players that play in higher reputation competitions. They do have Keylor Navas, but he doesn't play anymore, and truthfully he didn't impress me last year when he did play. Combined with the mediocre form, I predict they will finish bottom of this group. Next up is Japan. No big surprise to many considering the remaining 2 teams perhaps, but I do think that they will be competitive and might be able to pull off an upset. Japan qualified for the World Cup surprisingly behind Saudi Arabia, but managed to do so completely still. In the Asia Cup of 2019 they lost the final to Qatar. But let's take a look at their Japanese squads. A surprising number of players are playing in the Bundesliga, but some can be found in La Liga, Ligue 1 and the Primeira Liga of Portugal. I think the Japanese midfield is the strongest part of the squad, with players like Kubo, Minamino and Morita. And the player I would like to highlight, Kamada. Kamada is on a great run with Eintracht Frankfurt, qualifying for the knockout stage of the Champions League. He himself scored 7 goals and provided 2 assists in 11 matches in the Bundesliga at the moment, which is not bad at all for a midfielder. Their goalkeeper and forward line are less renowned, but as a team, Japan should be able to provide Germany and Spain with a match. I have long doubted between which team will come first in this group, and if you asked me a few months ago, I might have given a different answer. Both sides have great talents, quality, but also a few weak spots. Spain's main talent are in midfield with Pedri and Gavi receiving Golden Boy awards in the past years. On top of that, they can rely on more experienced players like Busquets, Alba and Carvajal. The first 2, however, might have passed their expiration date, resulting in Alba being a substitute these days and Busquets being heavily scrutinized. Aymeric Laporte has been dealing with injury issues this season, and it's not entirely clear whether he will be available for the World Cup. On the other hand, Spain will be able to rely on Rodri, Soler, Pau Torres, all reliable players. The reason I think Spain will come second is because the Barca midfield has proven to be too light on the highest level and might get overwhelmed in the World Cup as well. I am not impressed by their goalkeepers, and while Morata does not deserve all the hate he gets, you would expect a nation like Spain to have a better striker. Then we have Germany. Germany had a lackluster Euro Cup last year, getting eliminated in the round of 16 by England. In the previous World Cup, Germany came last in the group and was eliminated very well. Things have changed in the past years, however. They qualified comfortably for the World Cup, winning 9 out of the 10 matches. Their Nation League performance was lackluster, but again, I refuse to draw too many conclusions from that. Instead, let's take a look at their squad. Manuel Neuer might not make it, but with André ter Stegen they have a worthy successor in form. The centre-backs perhaps are not world class, but they do play together at Borussia Dortmund. In defense, however, I do have slight concerns about Thilo Kehrer, who I've seen at PSG, and he never fully impressed me. In fact, I think he was quite a weak spot myself. Their midfield is probably the strongest part of the German squad. They have pure class with Gundogan and Kimmich, and in front of them they have Sané, Gosens, Hofmann, and the player I would like to highlight, Musiala. This player, Musiala, might have been Bayern's best player, contributing a whopping 9 goals and 4 assists in 13 matches in the Bundesliga. He's only 19 years old, which means Germany and Bayern München could enjoy this gem for years to come, and because of that I rate Germany higher than Spain. Then we move on to Group F. This is a group with some potential surprises. Based on the FIFA ranking and expectations in previous tournaments, a lot of people might expect Belgium to top the group here. But I think that honor will go to Croatia instead. Croatia is a mix of quality veterans like Kovacic, Petkovic, Budimir, Lovren, Vida, Perisic and Brozovic, but also has some exciting younger talents like Maher, Stanisic and Gvardiol. Of course, their main man will be Luka Modric, who at the age of 37 can still be considered one of the best central midfielders in the game. Croatia managed to win their Nation League group above Denmark, France and Austria. Qualified for the World Cup with just 1 loss and has done well in previous tournaments. They were lucky that they faced a strong Spain in the Euro Cup round of 16, which they only lost on penalties. And in the previous World Cup they actually managed to reach the finals, where they lost to a superior France. Due to a lack of real competition in this group, I think first spot is theirs to take. Then we have an interesting match-up for second place. We have Belgium that are on a downward spiral, and possibly a reborn Morocco and Canada. Let's go through the teams in detail, shall we? Canada did not qualify for the previous World Cup, but managed to do so this time with flying colours. Canada came first in the third round group, above Mexico, which qualified them automatically for the World Cup. They lost the semi-final in the Gold Cup of 2021 to Mexico. Is everything going well for Canada? Well, no. This year they lost 4 matches, which is more than the 2 they lost in 2021, and the year is obviously not over yet. They lost to Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras and Uruguay. Especially the losses to Honduras and Panama could be worrisome. Furthermore, when we take a look at the Canadian squad, it seems like the vast majority of them play in the Canadian competition. Players like Ukbo, Buchanan, David and Eustacio do play in respectable competitions though, and are doing quite well this year. 2 of them are part of the surprisingly successful Belgian Brugge side that managed to qualify for the next round of the Champions League. The player I would like to highlight here would be Davies, who's a reliable first squad player at Bayern. Then we have Belgium. Belgium has done extremely well the past decade with their golden generation and have managed to get first place on the FIFA rankings on multiple occasions. Yet, despite the surplus in quality, it never amounted to an international title. In the Euro Cup of 2021 they lost to Italy in the quarterfinals, in 2018 they lost to France in the semi-finals, in 2016 they lost to Wales in the Euro Cup quarterfinals, and they lost to Argentina in the quarterfinals of the World Cup of 2014. Their defense and consistency seem to have been their biggest issues, as they had World Cup or world-class players on goal, midfield and attack with Courtois, Hazard, Lukaku and De Bruyne. Courtois and De Bruyne are still around and deserve to be highlighted due to their good form and consistency. Hazard and Lukaku have completely faded, however, along with a lot of other regulars that made the Belgian team what it was. They have some good talents in Faas, Ketelaar and Penda, but so far they aren't as good as the predecessors, and in their last fixtures they still relied on Vertonghen and Alderweireld, who are 33 and 35, way past the best. They came second in the Nation League behind the Netherlands, but qualified comfortably still for the top. I, however, do not think Morocco is without a chance. They made the previous edition of the World Cup as well in 2018, but they did finish last in the group, somewhat disappointingly behind Spain, Portugal and Iran, where they were deemed somewhat of an outsider for that group. In the Africa Cup they lost to Egypt after extra time in the quarterfinals, but qualified comfortably by beating Congo in the last round in the qualifiers. Their results over the past years could be considered mediocre, though, and news about the Moroccan squad was mostly dominated by the head coach that banned players from the squad. Due to the mixed results and new head coach that has been brought in, banned players like Ziyech have been brought back into the squad. The results also have improved, and with the likes of Mazraoui and Hakimi, the squad has some world-class players as well. They have a good amount of players playing in respectable leagues too, like La Liga, Serie A and Ligue 1. I think Morocco has the means to challenge Belgium for second place, but I do think Belgium has a slightly better squad on paper. Therefore, I think Belgium will come second and Morocco third, but I would not be completely surprised if Morocco turned it around and grabbed second place after all, which leaves Canada in fourth place. Group G was dubbed the Group of Death by most analysts after the draw. Brazil, of course, is the highest profile team in the group, and rightfully so. They have two of the best available goalkeepers in Alisson and Edison. World-class players like Neymar, Vinicius Jr., Marquinhos and Casemiro. They have a lot of new talent as well that have recently developed, like Paqueta, Antony and Bruno Guimaraes. Brazil is probably the side that has the highest amount of individual quality that can break open any match, and expectations are high. Betting officers and pundits crown them frontrunners to win this year's World Cup. They have qualified comfortably for this edition and have a similar form as Argentina, except for the fact that they lost the Copa America in Brazil last year to Argentina. Despite the fact that all teams can put up a fight in this group, I expect Brazil will be able to grab first place. Brazil's squad has some weaknesses though, and some question marks. Brazil's fullbacks are possibly weak spots. Will Richarlison be fully fit before the World Cup starts? And will TJ prefer Richarlison or Gabriel Jesus up front? Will Fabinho play, or will he be punished for his poor form at Liverpool? Questions that could be important later on into the tournament for sure. I think that the other three teams can all compete for second place, as I don't think that they differ too much in quality on paper. Cameroon's squad is mostly active in France, although some seem to be substituted best. A lot of Serbian players are active in Italy, and Switzerland's players are more spread out but play in respectable leagues in most cases. Switzerland, however, has an absolute ace in the hole this tournament. Granit Xhaka is a veteran that has been around for a while and is perhaps in the form of his life at Arsenal, that's currently sitting at the top of the table of the Premier League. Switzerland qualified by winning their qualification group, forcing Italy into the playoff round and out of the tournament, which is probably the biggest surprise in the European qualifiers. In the Euro Cup, they lost to Spain in the quarterfinals after penalties, which is impressive. They came second in the Nation League, 1 point behind group winner Croatia. Overall, I would say impressive performances, which makes me think that out of these three, Switzerland will come second in the group. Serbia was in Nations League B, but managed to come first in a group with Norway, Slovenia and Sweden, which is respectable. They also topped their group above Portugal in the qualifiers, which nearly made Portugal miss out on the World Cup as well. Serbia, however, missed out on Euro 2021 and failed to advance to the knockout round in the World Cup in 2018 in a very similar group, as they ended behind Brazil and Switzerland. The player I'd like to highlight here would be Vlahovic, who's having a decent season despite being at Juventus. Because of Switzerland's consistency, I think Serbia is the underdog on paper between the two, so I'll put them in third. But I would not be completely surprised if things end up reversed. Then we have Cameroon. Cameroon qualified by edging out Algeria after extra time. In the last Africa Cup, they made it to the semi-finals, where they lost to Egypt after a penalty shootout. If you take a look at their recent results, there is a reason to worry for Cameroon, however. They lost to South Korea, Uzbekistan and Equatorial Guinea in their last 4 matches. The player I would like to highlight here would be Andre Onana, who had a very impressive year at Ajax until he was sidelined due to potential performance-enhancing drug scandals. However, this year he made a move towards Inter and managed to become first choice for goalkeeper during the season. Another player that deserves highlighting is 70-year-old Mukuku, who managed to score 10 goals in the Bundesliga already. I think Cameroon can make life difficult for at least Switzerland and Serbia, but I think they will lose out on overall quality and consistency, which makes me think they will come last in the group. Last, we have Group H, a group of nations that I think all have their own worries and won't feel they go into the World Cup as well as they could have. We'll go through all of the countries one by one, of course, and discuss what's going on. Let's start with South Korea. South Korea qualified for the World Cup by becoming second in the third round, qualified behind Iran, but qualified comfortably still. In the Asian Cup of 2019, however, South Korea underperformed by losing to Qatar in the quarterfinals. They failed to make the knockout stages in the previous World Cup, ending behind Sweden and Mexico, but in front of Germany in the group stage. Since March this year, South Korea lost to the United Arab Emirates, Brazil, Japan and drew against Costa Rica and Paraguay. There are some victories as well, of course, but mostly against small-time squads that won't be playing in the World Cup. The biggest worry, however, is without a doubt the high possibility that their best player, Heung-min Son, is injured and won't be able to at least play to his best ability in the World Cup, as he picked up a severe injury in the last Champions League match. Focus will now go to Min Jae Kim, who's having a terrific season at Napoli. Unfortunately for South Korea, the rest of the squad seems to be either playing in Asia or are sitting on the bench at smaller European clubs. All of these factors combined makes me think they will come last in Group H. Next up, we take a look at Ghana. Ghana only just qualified for the World Cup, drawing with South Africa on points and goal difference, and they advanced only on scoring and conceding one more goal. Then they needed extra time to see off Nigeria in the following face-off. In the Africa Cup of 2021, they came dead last in the group behind the Comoros, Gabon and Morocco. In 2022, they lost matches to Algeria, Morocco, Comoros, Japan, Brazil and drew against the Central African Republic, Gabon, Nigeria twice and Ethiopia. There were victories as well, of course, and especially after the loss to Japan, Ghana's form has picked up, despite it being mostly victories against nations they should beat. There's quality in the squad as well. Their best player is probably Thomas Partey, who's having a great season at Arsenal at the moment. And another player to watch is Mohamed Kudus, who's doing well at Ajax, despite Ajax not having a great season so far. They have a mostly Premier League defensive line, and with Inaki Williams, who's having a respectable season with Athletic Bilbao, I think their defense is going to be solid. The other positions, however, are definitely a weak point, and with their lack of consistency and lack of real form, I think Ghana will come third in this group only. Then we have a potential toss-up between Uruguay and Portugal for first place. Both squads are having issues at the moment, and especially the injuries will make it a hard one to predict. Uruguay will be missing Rossi, but most of all Araujo due to injuries. There is a chance that Araujo will make it back in time, if only just. Gone are the days that Uruguay would be able to provide the centre-backs of a good Atletico Madrid, and especially without Araujo, Uruguay will be left with defenders that won't even come close. In the last World Cup, Uruguay lost to world champions France in the quarterfinals, but as I said, that was a completely different squad. In the Copa America, Uruguay lost on penalties in the quarterfinals to a mediocre Colombia. For a while, it actually looked Uruguay would not even qualify for the World Cup, but by winning their last 4 matches, they edged out nations like Peru and Colombia after all. Their results the past years have fluctuated a lot, which includes victories against Mexico and Canada, but a loss to Iran and a draw against the United States. I would say it's not all bad for Uruguay at the very least. While Darwin Núñez hasn't found his best form at Liverpool yet, his talent is undeniable, and with Federico Valverde, they have one of the best central midfielders around. Finally, we have Portugal. On paper, Portugal has a squad dripping with quality, but a lot of players are in questionable form. For starters, one of the brightest stars in football, Cristiano Ronaldo, is considered a substitute at Manchester United this year, and even when he plays, he needs a lot of chances to score this season. His teammate Bruno Fernandes is in similar poor form as well. Joao Felix has been poor basically since he joined Atletico Madrid, and the Manchester City defense has not been too reliable this season yet, which is reflecting badly on the likes of Joao Cancelo and Ruben Dias. Diogo Jota will miss the World Cup due to an injury as well, but there is definitely some younger talent. The two players I would like to highlight are Vitinha and Nuno Mendes. Especially Mendes has great pace, a high work rate, physical strength and a decent cross, which makes him a great addition to this Portugal squad. I think this Portugal squad can be bullied and overwhelmed by opponents that have better physical strength and higher work rate, which has happened to Portugal before, yet due to the talent on paper, I can't do anything but to put Portugal in first place. Alright, so next is the round of 16. First match is going to be Senegal, the United States. I will go for Senegal here. They have simply the better squad on paper, they are better adjusted to the heat, and they are simply in better form. I think Senegal has everything going for them at the moment. Then we have Argentina, Denmark. I will go for Argentina here. Assuming Lo Celso, Di Maria and of course Lionel Messi are fit, they will be the better side, even though I do feel bad for Denmark, as I think they could have made a deep run as well if they had a more favorable draw. I would definitely rate them higher than, for example, current Portugal, Spain or Belgium at the moment. But yeah, I do think Argentina will proceed to the next round. Then we have England, the Netherlands. I will go for England here. Again, their current form is worrying, but I trust Southgate to be able to beat a side that has much quality, that has much less quality on paper when it matters. Then we have France, Poland. Similar story here. I will go with France, as I don't see France losing here, as the quality and difference is simply too big. France lost to Switzerland in the Euro Cup, yes, but that required a perfect storm of things going wrong. France lost 4 defenders to injuries, missed a lot of opportunities, while Switzerland scored a lot of the chances. Assuming something similar doesn't happen here, France is simply too good to lose to Poland. Then we have Germany, Belgium. I will go with Germany here, as I predict Belgium's weaker defense will once again cost them dearly. Then we have Brazil, Uruguay. Another similar story. Brazil will win this one because of the difference in quality. It's simply too much of a difference. Then we have Croatia, Spain. A repeat of the round of 16 in the Euros, but I think this time Croatia will grab the win. I think Croatia's experience and work rate will be more valuable than Spain's youthful talent and technical abilities. Unless Luis Enrique will reinforce the Spanish midfield, odds are that it will be blown away by players that know just how to handle the Barcelona midfield, like Luka Modric. I also don't think it's very likely that Enrique will reinforce the Spanish midfield, as that means they would play either a 3-4-3 or a 4-4-2, and I don't think he has the players for it, and I don't think he would like to change system all of a sudden on the World Cup. Then we have Portugal, Switzerland. This really feels like a toss-up to me, but I think I would take Switzerland over Portugal if I have to take a pick, and I do. Again, on paper, Portugal has the superior squad, but I think Switzerland will play as a team, while Portugal is much less of a cohesive bunch with too many players out of form. So we'll go Switzerland here. Then we move on to the quarterfinals. Senegal, Argentina, which I think is a bit similar as Argentina-Denmark, as I think Senegal is a similar squad as Denmark. If Senegal drew another opponent, maybe they could have reached the semi-finals, but I'm afraid that Argentina, like Denmark before them, I don't think Senegal has the quality to beat Argentina, while Argentina has the work rate as well. Then we have Germany-Brazil, another spicy matchup. Everyone of course remembers the extreme 7-1 defeat Brazil suffered in the semi-final of 2014 World Cup. What was worse is that Brazil lost in front of their home audience when the expectations were massive. Now, Brazil did manage to beat Germany 0-1 in 2018, but that was just a friendly game with nothing at stake. I'm sure Brazil will be very motivated to correct the wrong still. Will it be enough to beat Germany though? Brazil has the better squad on paper, but I don't think Germany's squad is that far off. I will have to go with Brazil here due to the overall quality on the pitch and their more consistent form running up to the World Cup. But I do think that Germany does have a chance here. Then we have England-France, two teams that had worrying performances lately, although again most of it was in the Nations League. The two teams I compared before as well, as I think they are playing and are being led quite similar. I think France edges this one out, as the main difference between these two squads are the ones up front. Harry Kane is one of the best strikers around, but with the ones around him, I would say they are not on the level of Nkunku, Benzema and Mbappe, with the likes of Griezmann and Giroud as a backup. And last up we have Croatia, Switzerland. These squads are quite similar as well. A sober squad with a few stars that will put in the work rate. Croatia's age might catch up to them, but that's what we thought about the Croatian squad for a while. Especially Modric still seems to be at the top of his game, and assuming the Croatian stars will bring what they normally bring, I think Croatia edges out Switzerland in quality and therefore proceeds to the semi-finals. Speaking of, let's continue on to the semi-finals. First off, we have Argentina-Brazil. Now, this match would probably deserve to be the final, as I expect these two squads to be the best ones in the tournament. It's the eternal South American rivalry. It's Messi versus Neymar. As I said before, if it comes down to individual quality, Brazil probably has the advantage. However, Argentina has never been more of a cohesive group and has not lost in 35 matches up to now, which is similar as the form Italy had before they won the Euro Cup last year. Argentina managed to smash Italy in a semi-friendly game to honor Diego Maradona, leaving the European champions no chance in their 3-0 victory. Argentina has proven to be able to handle Brazil as well in the Copa America final by beating them 1-0 in Brazil. If needed, Argentina can make this match an actual battle, completely disrupting the opponent's flow and pace. Unlike Scaloni, Tite has been criticized for having no actual plan and just to rely on the individual class of his players. I think it's perhaps a bit harsh, but Scaloni so far is deemed the better manager out of the two. I think Argentina could pull off an upset here and proceed to the final. Then we have Croatia-France, another fun match as it's a repeat of the 2018 World Cup final. After a decent start, Croatia could not contain France's quality and eventually lost 4-2. Arguably, the French squad is weaker than it was in 2018 due to the lack of Pogba and Kante, but as said before, France has some new talents as well, and I think the French squad still has too much quality to handle for Croatia, resulting into a French victory. Then we have the final, which is going to be France and Argentina, as you can see. Another fun matchup between Mbappe and Messi this time. It could be Messi's 1000th official match, assuming he'll play all games in the World Cup, and the PSG game against Auxerre this weekend. France has been somewhat lucky with their path to the final compared to Argentina, I feel, but the quality in the squad is still there. Quality-wise, I think both squads are about equal, but as said multiple times before, Argentina are the more cohesive squad, while France had to make changes to the midfield and defense in the past year. France's form, of course, is inferior, although again, I don't think the Nations League matters as much. Above all, I think Argentina will once again have a better work rate. Messi probably won't be able to do much defense-wise, but the rest of the squad has proven that they're willing to pick up the slack. On the French side, Mbappe will probably do just as little, and the types of Benzema, Giroud and Griezmann probably won't put up too much energy into defensive tasks, as that's something they're just not very good at. All combined, I think Argentina will be the winner of the 2022 2022 World Cup. If people are interested, there's the small final as well, which is between Croatia and Brazil. I think neither team will be very motivated to play this game, especially Brazil, since they are not here to play for third place. Yet, unless Brazil won't even bother to put up a match, I think Croatia has no shot at winning the game, which means I think Brazil will come third. Then we could see whether we can make some predictions about the top scorers. I think it's going to be very difficult to predict, as there's so many variables here. In the Euro Cup, everyone expected, for example, a lot from Mbappe, for example, but he finished the tournament with 0 goals and a missed penalty. I'm predicting France to reach the finals, which means they play 7 matches if I'm right. However, I don't think France will score too many goals in general, as they are a team that like to save their strength and play a lower line. Same old's true for England, which means I don't think Harry Kane will be a contender for top scorer. Also, I think the top scoring team is likely a team that at least proceeds to the semi-finals, as that's also because I don't think there will be a lot of teams that are just there to be kicked around. The teams I have to pick to get most goals conceded against would be perhaps Saudi Arabia after all, Costa Rica, and perhaps South Korea, and maybe even Wales. Since Germany is in the group with Costa Rica, I could see someone like Musiala picking up a lot of goals in the early stages, which could perhaps get him into contention. I nominate Brazil to be the team that would score the most automatically, as they like to attack and have a lot of quality in attack. Yet, they face relative tough opposition in the group stage already, and things won't get easier the moment they leave the group stage. Argentina has an easier group stage, but pretty tough opponents the moment they leave the group. Out of the 4 teams that make it to the semi-final, I don't think Croatia has the squad to outscore the rest. Then there are some outsider teams. Senegal and Mane could have been contenders, but sadly Mane starts out with an injury, and since he might not even play most group matches at the very least, again completely up to how quickly he'll be fit, I don't think Mane would be my pick for top scorer. Portugal could have been a contender if the forwards were in better form, and Spain is simply lacking a prolific goal scorer as well. Kevin De Bruyne could perhaps be considered another outsider, but I'm not expecting a lot from Lukaku anymore, and De Bruyne is still a midfielder and a better provider than a goal scorer, even though he can definitely do both. If I had to make a guess, I think Argentina will score most goals due to the weaker opposition in the group stages. If it comes to top scorer, it could be a toss-up between Neymar and Messi. Let's say Neymar, because I already think Argentina will be the team that scores the most goals. So those are my predictions, guys. Assuming we won't see a lot of injuries in the last match day, that would change things completely for some squads. I'm probably going to be sticking with this prediction, and I'll be pretty happy with it. After the World Cup is over, obviously I'll release another video to review my predictions, so you can all laugh at how wrong I obviously am. If you think I'm wrong, by all means let me know in the comments, and if you predict things better than I did, I'll obviously give you credit. But for now, thank you all for watching, and I hope you all enjoy the World Cup.